This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest a return visit from one of Alabama's most prominent attorneys, Tommy Gallion, who is a very prominent, outstanding gentleman here in Montgomery who has deep roots in Montgomery. You Montgomeryans have always known Tommy Gallion. I've known him most of my life, if not all of it. He wrote a real great book a couple of years ago. We had him on the show, and he knows a lot of Alabama political history. He's lived through it. His daddy was Attorney General of Alabama, and his wife's family was one of the founding families of Montgomery. And we're just fortunate Tommy take time to be with us, and he's a great, colorful, prominent Montgomery lawyer, and we're glad to have you on, Tommy.
Well, thank you. I think you've grossly exaggerated.
Well, you've been around sometime over that, Tommy. You know.
Well, I have. A lot of people have legal specialties: tax law, probate law, real estate law. Mine is screwing with politicians. Martindale Hubbell would write me up as A+.
Would they say that?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
well,
Tommy, tell me one of the things we talked about last time. I want to get on new stuff and hit your book from last time, but I find it so interesting. Those of us who know some Alabama history, I don't know a partial of course, you know the Montgomery stuff so well, but your family has been so intertwined in Montgomery political history and aristocracy and social stuff here in Montgomery. That day may be gone, but I remember hearing as a boy the Hill and Gunner families ran Montgomery politics. They would pick mayors and congressmen. Go back, if you will, and tell me about you. Married Lanny was a Hill, wasn't she?
Well, she was a Goodwin. Her mother was a Hill. Mm-hmm. And Judge Goodwin was just a terrific guy, and his family was equally as big.
Yeah, the Goodwins were.
Where they all, the Gunners and the Goodwins, like my wife's great-great-great-grandfather was President John Tyler. And John Tyler his two sons were in the military and was stationed at Gunner Air Force Base and started dating two Montgomery girls, one a Gunner, one a Goodwin. And so from that point on, they were very prolific, obviously liked sex because they spit out children like cats. But anyway, a very nice group of people. And my family was originally the French. They were Bonapartists too. When Napoleon went into exile the first time, they escaped to what is now called the Vine and Olive Colony in Demopolis, Marengo County. And
that's where your daddy came from, Marengo.
Yeah.
There's still a Gallion, Alabama over there.
Sure it is. It's a real big place. It's got a Baptist church, a post office, and an old Episcopal church.
I'd forgotten McDonald Gallion was from Marengo County.
Yeah, and he grew up in Birmingham. My grandfather was a doctor, and so was my great-grandfather, and they were the only two doctors in Marengo and Hale County. But back then, doctors went out at night and helped people and got cabbage and turnip greens for pay. But yeah, but they came over here and settled in Demopolis and what then was called Eagletown, which went away after Napoleon. And I came home in the 8th grade.
French ancestry.
Yeah. You can tell by my temperament. But anyway, I came home one day in the 8th grade, and we were studying Alabama history at Cloverdale, and I started saying, my teacher said we got Tommy Gallion in here, Gallion, Alabama, and all of that. And I said, boy, she laid it on. I said, I was so proud. He said, well, son, let me sit you down and tell you the real truth. And I said, oh, God, because he could come right to the point.
This is McDonald Gallion, Attorney General.
Yeah. And he said, that is all true. They came over here when Napoleon went into exile. In fact, Madame de George was kin to your grandmother's father. They settled on the clay banks of the Tom Bigby to grow grapes and scuppernong, and they lasted 3 months. The heat and the mosquitoes got the sane ones. They were in all their finery, and they packed up and went to hell back to France. Only the crazy stayed, and he said, "I'm sorry, son, but that's your family." I think he was right about
But
that.
you moved to Montgomery. Your daddy became Attorney General then, didn't he?
Well, when he got out of World War II, there were no.
He was in Phoenix City, part of that Phoenix City thing too.
Well, yeah, he cleaned up. He was chief prosecutor, and but he got shot twice and got Silver Star and 2 Purple Hearts.
He go to Alabama undergraduate and law school.
Yeah, he actually was a lot smarter than me. He actually went to Alabama when he was like 16, 17. And he was out of law school and then the Marine Corps when he was like 20, 21. But anyway, he came.
He was out of law school when he went in the Marines then.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, but there were no jobs, after the war. It was really hard. So Chief Justice Ed Livingston of the Supreme Court was the dean of the law school.
Very revered man.
Yeah, and my father was his clerk when he was in law school. And he called Chief Justice Ed. He said, I need a job. He said, "Well, you're my top student. Come on down." So at that time, if you can believe it, they had 4 assistant attorney generals.
That's all.
And they created one more, and that's how he got there. Now they've got, 400?
He was assistant attorney general and then went right
And
there
then
to
chief
attorney general.
assistant, and then the Albert Patterson murder, Gordon Persons was governor. And that's when the mafia out of Chicago was running Phoenix City, and a guy named Hoyt, oh hell, I forget his name.
I remember the Hoyt name, but anyway.
Yeah,
It wasn't
and-
Taylor, was it?
No, I'll think of it in a minute, brain freeze, it'll thaw out. But anyway, they were tough, and they ran my mother off the road, and I actually went into Phoenix City. I drove my father because it was so late at night. He had to get over there, and it was like what I would think Dante's picture of hell or inferno would be. There were slot machines being burned, the National Guard, prostitutes out in the street, the nightgowns, dope addicts. I mean, it was a scene from hell. I never got it out of my mind because I wasn't but like 10 or 11. So anyway, from that point on, the mafia went after my dad, and for I guess because he was the chief prosecutor.
Did they go after Crack Hannah too? They let him
No,
alone.
they were scared of Crack Hannah.
They didn't fool with him.
And that's an interesting story. When they drug Albert Patterson was assassinated, just been elected attorney general to clean up Phoenix City. So they started dragging the river that was right behind his office. And the first day they gave up, they found so many skeletons, knives, guns, they could never find which gun it was. And what would happen, nobody understood how Phoenix City was the biggest prostitution, drug, gambling city in the United States. Why? I'll ask you.
Because of Fort Benning being
You got it, right across the river.
Soldiers
Yeah,
come
and
back from the war. It probably was one of the biggest bases in the country.
it was at that time. It was the largest army base.
They preying on soldiers like crazy.
Oh man, and killed a lot of them. That listed AWOL there in the bottom of the river still. But anyway, they ran my mother off the road and blah blah this that. So they threatened to get our family, and so Dad got us moved down to Panama City Beach. And we were there. My mother went in a grocery store to get some groceries, and they said some real rough-looking hoodlums were in here looking for the Gallion family. So with that, highway patrol whisked down, and we hid out in Sarasota for the whole summer. And
You and your sister with you?
yeah, my sister.
You
and
were about 12 years old, were you?
I was 11. And anyway, it was kind of frightening, but I learned through that, as my father said, that I reminded him of a tornado that never could lighten one particular place, which is probably true. But it was quite frightening. But I don't think that the Phoenix City mob and the Chicago Mafia mob were any worse than the Alabama
They say
politicians.
Phoenix, the Phoenix City thing was, that mob was horrible.
Oh, they were horrible, but they killed people.
Uh-huh.
In Alabama, starting with Bob Riley, they just put everybody in jail.
That's one of the terrible things, too, is political prosecution.
My father says it's the worst thing a prosecutor can do. And it was all set up, and in my book here,
Let's hold that book up, if you will, to give our readers the name of that.
it's
a great
Shadow
book.
Government, Southern Style, Political Corruption from D.C. to Dixie. Now, I'm coming out with another edition, and it will stun, it'll probably make national news. Bob Riley became close when he was a congressman with Karl Rove, who I consider one of the lowest bred human beings on earth. And the only thing that he
Riley was close with Abernoff and Scanlon, too. Abernoff and Scanlon was Riley's buddies, too.
Oh, yeah, Abernoff and Scanlon, and that's where William Canary was their partner. And he came down here, and Riley got him a job with the truckers, and then the business canal. So then he married Laura Canary, and that's when they set up the deal. But I filed an affidavit in federal court, and Winton Blunt called me. He was a lifelong close friend. He bled Republican. He'd do anything for the Republican Party. He called me and asked me to come over to his house on that Saturday. I said, for what? He said, well, Karl Rove is coming down, and we're going to set up a deal where we're going to indict Don Siegelman in the middle of the election. And I said, what are you talking about, Winton? Well, we got Laura Canary is going to be the DA. We got Judge Mark Fuller, and I happen to know Mark and liked him. But anyway, and we got it set up, the FBI with us, and we're going to indict him. I said, on what? He said, well, we'll have to get around to that later. We'll come up with something. That's when they tried to use Scrushy. And I said, Winton, please don't do this. You're too good a person. Well, we got to get it. We got to take over. And we're going to take over all the Democrats and destroy them, in which they went after Milton McGregor and really almost destroyed Tuskegee. And but the most interesting thing, the one that was working with them, was Eric Holder.
Yeah, he was involved, too.
Oh, absolutely. Obama's Attorney General.
They said he was on retainer from all the Indian casinos when he was Attorney General.
Oh, well, the Indians own Alabama now. You can just get your tom-tom and tomahawk and head south, because they own the state. They got every politician right here. And, you know, I like the Indians. One of my favorite characters was Tonto on the Lone Ranger. But they literally, they own the gambling in Alabama. They own almost every politician, not all of them.
And it started with Bob Riley.
Oh. And I told Bob Riley to please sue me. Now, Bob Riley was in my class at Alabama. I told you this. The Love Gov Bentley was in my class. He married a girl I grew up with from first grade at Cloverdale through Alabama, Diane. And we were in Leaders Club and youth legislature and all that crap in high school. And she acted real shy, but she was a mean little motor scooter. And when I saw where she had caught him on that telephone with that young girl, I said, he better pack up his pimple-popping bag and haul ass. He is through. And so, sure enough.
You do, Diane.
Oh, girl, I'm telling you.
You're right about it. She came across as quiet and demure.
Oh, no. And her mother was mean as hell. She ran First Methodist Church in Cloverdale Park, and when we were kids, we'd throw water balloons over there and do the young people's stuff. Boy, she'd get us, and she was tough. But anyway, getting back to this, when I wrote this book, Shadow Government, it sold pretty good. I've kind of cut back on it now because I got calls in from people, and after a year and a half of hard work, I have uncovered the single most corrupt political prosecution, corruption in the FBI, corruption in the district attorney, federal district attorney's office, the governor's office in Washington, D.C. It's going to blow everybody's mind when we come out with it. Richard Scrushy, a certain law firm, and I have friends in there, and I actually have distant relatives. It's the biggest law firm in Alabama and all over them. They hired Bob Riley's son-in-law, Rob Campbell. From that point on, this was right after Riley went in, they got all the state business, bond business. For instance, our firm did a big Burnham firm, did a lot of municipal finance and all that, and we were low bid, and several other prominent firms were in there, and this firm was the highest. And of course, they got it after Riley said he was going to take the low bid. But what is so tragic about this is they wanted Health South. So it ends up being the most interesting two-pronged deal. They wanted to use Scrushy to try to get Siegelman, and they wanted to get Scrushy in the middle of it, really not to get Siegelman, but to take over Health South. And Richard Scrushy built Health South from scratch. He grew up on a farm when he was real young in Raymer, South Montgomery County, and then over in Selma. And he built the second only Fortune 500 company in Alabama. And they literally stripped him of it. And they did it through the most, when they got him sent to prison, and by the way, ain't no way that's going to stand for he or Siegelman with what I've uncovered. I mean, it's going to shock the minds of people how they got witness to lie by threatening to put them in prison. And then you remember Roger Schuler, the guy that was headed up UAB's public relations newspaper thing. He had a blog called Legal Schnauzer, and he wrote an article exposing Rob Riley, and all of a sudden they came out to his house and arrested him in Shelby County and put him in jail with no charge. They didn't know what it was.
I remember that happening.
And so then Rob Riley sued him for defamation, which he knew he couldn't go to trial because he was guilty. And so the judge issued, they got a judge from 100 miles away who was a friend of the Rileys. They got poor Roger Schuler, locked him up, and because he didn't appear for a hearing on a civil lawsuit he didn't even know about. The judge held him in contempt, and they put him in jail 3 months without bond.
Are you serious?
No charge. No charge. You can go through the books, which I have. So anybody that crossed them, they put in jail.
They put the Schuler man in jail for a civil case?
3 weeks. 3 weeks without bond. Have you ever heard of that?
No. For contempt of court.
Well, contempt of court, under the law, you can only put somebody in jail for 5 days. They had to shut him down because he was exposing Rob Riley. I would say these people are the most dangerous group of people that I've ever run into, and I've been a long time Republican, and in fact, still vote mainly for Republicans. But the Bob Riley crowd, I would rather go and drink out of a toilet than get in the same room with that group. They are vicious, and anybody that crosses them, they go after them. They try to break them. They don't kill them, but they'll break them, put them in jail.
Excuse me.
So what they did with Scrushy is they took everything away from him he had built. How did they do it? First of all, they got Alice Martin in Jefferson County, who's a big buddy with the Rileys, and they prosecuted Richard for 36 counts. After a month of trial, the jury found him not guilty on all 36. So Rob Riley and his good friend, I'm not going to name him, a Democrat, former senator, and I let it go there, they're best friends, they came in and sued Riley under the same criminal charges that they had. And they got this judge out of, who just gone into retirement. They got him to come back, who was a big drinking buddy at the Birmingham Country Club with him. And I tried one case before him years ago, and I think he passed out on the bench. I couldn't smell like an open bottle, but I didn't really care. And so they filed this civil case against Richard Scrushy, and he was in prison. And the judge would not allow him, denied him a jury, denied him any witnesses, denied him any evidence of documents, and only let him come into the courtroom in leggings and an orange jumpsuit and testify for about an hour. It is clearly the most unconstitutional rigged trial I've ever seen. So with that, when they put him in, sent him back, they go out and this firm drew up the judgment, not Scrushy's lawyers, they didn't even know about it, and put down over $2 billion he owed. Well, he'd already been found not guilty. And so they took that, and then they got the sheriff of Jefferson County, who was Big Riley buddy, who hired Rob Riley after they got $1 million DECA grant from Riley. That's another story. And so Scrushy's in prison out in Houston, and they raid his house. They terrified his wife and his children. They got in the car and fled in the middle of the night and stayed in a motel outside of Houston. They took everything they had. They took the children's toys. They took the children's cars. They took one of the children's boats. They took all of Miss Scrushy's jewelry. They took all of her clothes. They took her business documents and shut down. She was very smart. She was Miss Troy State or something, and pretty girl. But she had her own company that manufactured pajamas, and they were in 47 states. Richard had nothing to do with it. They took her business away from her. To me, and I've been down the road, I've seen a lot of things, and I have never run into something like this. And what now I have uncovered through the help of a couple of other people, including Richard and Sugarman, the trial that took place, they hid evidence that in fact would have freed both Scrushy and Sugarman. And the Scrushy's lawyer came in and said, he was a big-time lawyer from over in Atlanta, former U.S. attorney. And he comes in and said, Judge, we just don't think we got all the documents. So he told the two prosecutors to go back to their office and report the next morning. This one good thing for Judge Fuller. And they came in and said, we've got them all the evidence. What I have uncovered is going to blow the minds of every single person that sees what they did.
I love it.
I've got Nick Bailey has come forward, the one that put him in jail and given me an affidavit. I've got a former high-ranking guy at ABI who was Scrushy's security, and all these testified before the grand jury. The three people that I have that testified told the truth. Bailey, of course, lied, but they took Bailey out to Maxwell. One of the prosecutors was a part-time reservist, and they took him out to Maxwell over 50 times because they didn't want to see him in the federal courthouse. And they had two FBI agents with them who are the ones that were running up, and the ones that Judge Myron Thompson told never to come back in his courtroom. They caught him. He was dating both the judge as a law clerk or something, and the court reporter in the McGregor case. And they're all tied up in it, but it's really, when you think of what they did, Don Sugarman was Attorney General, Secretary of State, Governor, whether you liked him or not. I always liked him. I never voted for him, but I told him that, but I liked him. And unfortunately, I voted for Riley. Going back on it, I would have rather have voted for Charles Manson, but you know.
You had the last time we talked, you told me a conversation that Riley had with you. Yeah. I love what you told him. Tell me that story again, if you will. What was he doing? He was trying to get you to saying things about him.
Yeah, he called me up to his office, and I walked in.
Had you said something about him being in the pocket of the Indians or something, or which he was?
Well, he was, but yeah, I was putting some stuff out, and I actually had a fundraiser for him.
For Riley?
When he came back, he was like if I remember correctly, a little over $250,000 in debt. Now, according to an FBI source I have, he came out worth, he and his family, about 32 million. Now, hell of a day's work in 4 years, and he's still going. And in my book, I told him, and I mean this, I wish they would sue me. I'll pay their filing fee. I'll drive somewhere to pick up the service. They'll never go under oath. But what has happened and how they planned this to put Siegelman and take away Scrushy's business, they got to pay the piper now. You know, that big wheel turns.
Yeah.
What
goes around comes around.
Comes around, and everybody said, "Oh, Tommy, you know, aren't you afraid?" I said, "Hell, I had a good breeding ground in Phoenix City."
If you've been through Phoenix City, I mean, they can't scare you. You saw what your daddy and mama went through as a little boy.
Look, the only way that evil can survive is for good men to do nothing. That was the famous quote by the British philosopher, and my father had it on his desk. And
Dante, wasn't it?
No, it was. Oh God, he was English.
It doesn't matter.
No, Dante was. I studied Dante.
The greatest place in hell is for the man. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it's so shocking that if the United States government and others don't do something, I'm filing something too, which out there I know, please don't kill me, my wife will be upset. Maybe she won't be.
You don't want her to see this show, do you?
Nah, she's scary. And, you know, she always, I'll have to admit, I've been rather feisty growing up, and I've never backed down. I've been knocked out several times, but that was back in college and right out of college. But no, this is so serious when you think how they've earned these two men's life. Richard Scrushy is living on Social Security outside of Houston, Texas, in a 2-bedroom house with no carpet. He and his wife.
Is that right?
They took every single penny they both had, and still coming after him. Now I'm representing Miss Scrushy and Richard Scrushy in the garnishment. They're continuing to garnish Health South is because they don't want him to come forward. Mm-hmm. And you see, the big thing that turned in this case for me was when I saw Richard's retirement. And the only way they didn't have to pay him about $30 million over 10 years in retirement was to have him found guilty of fraud. So that's the reason they filed the lawsuit when he was in prison. And have you ever heard of anybody filing a lawsuit, getting their close friend out of retirement and coming in, no figures to match it, coming in after he'd been found not guilty on the same charges in federal court on a 1-month trial, and take every single penny he had and deny him a jury trial, deny him witnesses? I mean, I don't know. I really feel sorry for both of them, but Scrushy was not a politician.
Well, we've got to look forward to your revelations, and our time's up, Tommy.
Okay.
But I appreciate you taking time to do this and let's be one of the first ones to hear the story. Folks, our guest has been Tommy Gallion, and y'all will hear more about this show as we go along, and we'll have you back on again, too, when everything's revealed. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you tune again next week for This Week in Alabama Politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.